founder of the African History Network, host of the Michael Imhotep Show on the Empowerment Radio Network, and host of the African History Network show on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation in Detroit. Hey, I want to let you know that coming up this Saturday, August 27th, 2016, I will be speaking at Al-Kibalan Village for the First Saturday's Marketplace. Now, the event is from 12 noon to 6 p.m. 12 noon to 6 p.m. Saturday, August 27th, 2016. I'll be speaking from about 2 p.m. to about 4 p.m. Okay, and my presentation is very timely. I'll deal with the time we have been waiting for is now. The time we have been waiting for is now. Colin Kaepernick, the national anthem, the slave movies, and the Black Bank movement. Colin Kaepernick, the national anthem, the slave movies, and the Black Bank movement. Okay, so that's taking place this Saturday, August 27, 2016. I'm sorry, September 3rd. This Saturday, September 3rd, 2007. I don't know why I said August 27th. This Saturday, September 3rd, 2016, 12 noon to 6 p.m. at Al-Kibalan Village. Al-Kibalan Village, okay? And it's going to, some of the things I'm going to deal with. Of course, I've been dealing with Colin Kaepernick here on my show, and his stance against the national anthem. But more importantly, a lot of people are not focusing on why he's taking this stance. It's not because of the national anthem. It's because of the oppression of African Americans and people of color in this country. Okay, and he actually said on Sunday, he said, "I'm going to continue to stand with the people that are being oppressed. To me, this is something that has to change. When there's significant change, and I feel like the flag represents what it's supposed to represent, this country is representing people the way that it's supposed to, I'll stand," end quote. So we're going to deal with exactly what he said, okay, some of the response to it. Then we're going to get into some of the history of the national anthem written by Francis Scott Key. Who was Francis Scott Key? A lot of people don't know that he was a slave owner. Not only was he a slave owner, he came from a family that became wealthy from owning slaves. We'll talk about some of his history, his views, how the national anthem became, how it was became to be, because it did not even become, even though he wrote it in 1814, it did not become the national anthem until 1931. So we're going to deal with some of that history as well, okay? And then I'm going to talk about a proliferation of slave movies. I've talked about this before a couple of months ago when the remake of Roots came out. I talked about this. Even though slavery is part of our history, African people have been in this land we call the United States of America at least 51,700 years. We've been here at least 51,700 years. The Khoisan were here. They come from Southern Africa. They have the oldest DNA on the planet. If you read the book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence, by Dr. David Imhotep, his book thoroughly documents this history. He has 713 footnotes. He uses 13 different disciplines. There's overwhelming evidence that was found back in 2004 by archaeologist Dr. Albert Goodyear, who is an archaeologist at the University of South Carolina. They found artifacts, architecture, campsites, footprints in lava, paintings, linguistics, DNA, skeletons, tools, structures, overwhelming evidence of an African presence there. We know we have the Folsom people who Folsom, Arizona is named after, and Folsom Prison are named after. And we know that African people were here before Native Americans came into existence also. The people who we call the Native Americans are the offspring of an intermixing of Africans who were already here. We had Africans from ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt here, and we're going back and forth to Africa as well. We know pyramid mounds were built up and down the Mississippi River. Cahokia in East Illinois, I think it is. Cahokia, that's one of the remaining pyramid mounds. But these were all built by our ancestors. But Africans are going to intermix with Asians who come here around 3000 BC, and their offspring are who we have been taught to call Native Americans. And if you go look at old black and white photographs of Native Americans, a lot of these people were darker skinned people, high cheekbones, things like this, not the white looking Native Americans that we see today. Okay, so what happens is that when we have this proliferation of slave movies, and I'm not against the story of roots. I have a problem with the way that it's told because it negates the fact that African people are indigenous to this land, and negates the fact that we've been here at least 51,700 years. We were here before European explorers. We are the original Native Americans, okay? And I saw numerous interviews with, whether it was LeVar Burton, I heard an interview Reverend Al Sharpton did with Mario Van Peebles, who directed one of the episodes of the Roots the Remake. I saw interviews with the executive producers and things like this. Will Packard, etc. I saw the interviews that Roland Martin did about it on News One Now. And nobody anywhere in these interviews said that even though this story is part of our history and slavery is part of our history, nobody said that African people are indigenous to this land. None of them said that we were here before Europeans came here, before Native Americans. We were here before the transatlantic slave trade. Not only that, there were millions of African people in this land, and there were more of us already here than came here during the transatlantic slave trade. You have a very small amount that actually come to the land we call the United States during the transatlantic slave trade, between 388,000 and about 1.4 million. So what happens is that when you have this proliferation of slave movies, in 2013 alone, there were 7 slave-themed movies that came out. The slave movies are told to the deletion and to the detriment of tens of thousands of years of African history that preceded that. Okay, not just on the continent of Africa, but in this land also. That's to the total detriment, and it perpetuates what I call the 1619 myth. The 1619 myth, the myth that the history of African people started in this country August 20th, 1619. Okay, when that Dutch warship, that Dutch man of war, which was actually an English warship, not a Dutch warship, but when it landed in Jamestown, Virginia in 1620. Now, even though this happens, there were already African people here. And another thing that's going to happen is that European settlers are going to reclassify a lot of the indigenous African nations that were already here. They're going to reclassify a lot of those as Native Americans. So it becomes hard for us to find, where these people went if you don't know what you're looking for. But Captain John Smith of Virginia, Jamestown, Virginia, Captain John Smith said that he was captured by a group of black Indians. And if you read The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence by Dr. David Imhotep, he deals with this in that book. Okay, so that's one of the things I'm going to talk about. Yes, slavery is part of our history, but that's not our only history, and even the history of African people in this country does not start in slavery. And we are psychologically damaging our children. We are psychologically damaging our children when we teach them that their history starts in this country conquered in bondage by the ancestors of the Europeans who are here today. Okay, I was at an elementary school. I was speaking for the African American History Month celebration, and after my presentation was over, I was in the hallway talking to one of the teachers, and there was this long poster on the wall, and it was chronicling milestones in African American history, right? So they start with Columbus discovering America. Well, I'm looking at this and I'm pissed to the heights of passivity, because they show Columbus discovering America, then they show images of African people in bondage, conquered by Europeans. And African American children have to walk up and down the hall every day and see this psychological programming with lie. First of all, Columbus never came to the land we call the United States of America, number one. He's in the Caribbean, he's in Central America, and in South America a little bit. He's in Cuba, Haiti, and Jamaica, and Puerto Rico, things like this. The closest he came to this land that we call the United States of America is Cuba, which is 90 miles away. This is why in my presentations, I show you his 4 voyages and show you where he went so we can deal with facts and evidence. And I'm going to do this on Saturday as well, Saturday, September 3rd. Okay, I'll do this on Saturday also. So, and when we lie to our children and tell them that Columbus discovered America, and they see images of themselves being conquered by Europeans, and they think this is how their history started in this country in bondage, it develops a self-hatred. It develops a self-hatred in our children that grows worse as they grow older. This is why we have to reclaim our history and culture, teach it to our children, and our history and culture gives us our VIPs, our values, our interests, and our principles. Our values, interests, and principles, as 2 of my teachers, Dr. Leonard Jeffries and Professor James Small, talk about, accurately teach us. And they influence your history and culture, influence your economic empowerment, political empowerment. So we can never truly get the economic empowerment together until we reclaim our minds, take our minds back from the oppressor. Okay, because we've been taught to see reality through the eyes of Europeans. Okay, and this is not hating on anybody. This is not about calling people names and things like this. We're just dealing with history and facts and evidence. Okay, so we're going to deal with this weekend, September 3rd, 2016. This is part of the First Saturday's Marketplace at Alkebulan Village, 7701 Harper Avenue, Detroit, Michigan. It's from 12 noon to 6 p.m. This is a free event. Come on out, bring the family. There'll be edutainment. I'll be doing a presentation. My presentation is called "The Time We Have Been Waiting For Is Now." Colin Kaepernick, the National Anthem, slave movies, and the Black Bank Movement. Okay? Saturday, September 3rd. I'll be speaking from about 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. For more information, you can call 313-578-1300. 313-578-1300. Alkebulan Village is on Harper Avenue, right off of right near Gratiot. Okay, and we're also going to talk about the Black Bank Movement that's going on right now, but because of events like the killing of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile, other injustices, many African Americans have been asking, what can we do to fight back? How can we strengthen ourselves? And we know around July 7th or July 8th, I think it was July 7th, 2016, hip-hop artist Killer Mike was on 107.9 in Atlanta with Miss Shanika, and he was interviewed, and he talked about putting our money in African American owned banks. He's in Atlanta. He talked about putting your money in Citizens Trust Bank. Okay, and how then when you put more money in African American owned banks, this allows them to loan more money to the community to start businesses, expand businesses, and buy homes. Okay, and so there's a movement taking place right now. Hashtag move your money. Hashtag bank in. We have 22 African American owned banks right now in the U.S. When you add in credit unions, you got about 38 or so. And there's a movement taking place. These banks are taught, every banks from like One United Bank and Manufacturers and Farmers Bank, Citizens Trust Bank in Atlanta. They said in 5 days they had 8,000 new accounts that were open. You have banks in Chicago. They've seen hundreds of accounts open in 1 month. Mechanics and Farmers Bank in 5 days. They saw hundreds of new accounts open that totaled $1.25 million in new deposits. Okay, so we're going to talk about that movement that's going on right now and the importance of supporting African American owned banks. We used to do it a lot more. Okay, at one point we had around the 1880s, we had about 130 African American owned banks. Today, 14% of the population, 22 banks. Asian Americans, who are only 4% of the U.S. population, have more than 3 times as many banks as we do. And if you go and look at people's communities and you look at the banks that they own, the communities that are usually cleaner, have more development, have wealthier people living there, they probably have a higher proliferation of banks that they own. okay, in those communities as well. So these are the four main things we're going to be dealing with this Saturday. So I encourage you to come on out, tell your friends about it, share this Facebook broadcast with them. Be sure to listen to the Michael Imhotep Show every Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Empowerment Radio Network. We broadcast right here on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. We have 900,000 followers on our Facebook page. We reached 900,000 yesterday. Thanks to everybody who follows us. Tell your friends about this page. All of our shows are podcasted at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can download the podcast. They're also on iTunes. The African History Network show is our page on iTunes as well. But if you go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, we have all that information there. Also, okay, now Saturday there'll be vendors there. We'll have a vendor. I forgot to tell you all, I'm so busy preparing for my presentation. We'll have a vendor table there as well for the African History Network, so you can come and get my DVD presentations with documentaries like Hidden Colors and Urban Kryptonite, Out of Darkness, things like that also, okay? And you can order all of our DVDs from our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. And then while I have you here, I want to let you know coming up Thursday, September 8th, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. I'll be with one of my teachers, Professor James Small. We're doing a screening and discussion of the documentary Hidden Colors 4, The Religion of White Supremacy. This is put on by the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. This is part of their Liberation film series. It's a free event. Come on out. Thursday, September 8th, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Free event, Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, 315 East Warren Avenue in Detroit, right near Wayne State University. You can visit, for more information, you can visit theright.org, W-R-I-G-T-H, theright.org, W-R-I-G-H-T, I should say, W-R-I-G-H-T, theright.org, okay? That's for the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. Okay, so I got to get out of here. I just finished doing my radio show today. That's why I'm here in the studio. Just finished broadcasting that, so I have to... you'll be able to listen to that podcast in about an hour or so at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All right, on Facebook, Matthew Hawkins said, come to California. Oh, thanks for reminding me, Matthew. Okay, look, if you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization, inbox me here on Facebook. Inbox me here on our Facebook fan page. And also email me at info at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Email me, info at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can go to our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. At the top of the page, click on Michael Imhotep. My bio is there as well. But if you want me to do a presentation for your group or organization, email me, info at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Let's set it up. A lot more people should be contacting me to do presentations, things like that. And it's like a lot of people just don't follow through. They say, hey, come to this place, come to that place. I say, well, you know, people contact me. They want me to come out and do a presentation for their group or organization. We can make it happen. Darlene Songbird Buchanan said, can we have a serious conversation about reparations? I just talked about reparations last Thursday, on Ralph Godby's show. I can't remember, did I broadcast that on Facebook? I can't remember. More important than reparations is enforcing the Black Freedmen Indian Treaty of 1866. Because that's law. The Black Freedmen Indian Treaties of 1866. If you get here's the thing. If you get my presentation on Black Wall Street, the lecture I did, Black Wall Street from Destruction to the Resurrection of Economic Empowerment for African Americans. You get that presentation. It's on our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. I talk about the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties of 1866, how that's our best chance to get any type of reparations, because it's being enforced right now for the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians. Okay. Also, if you listen to the podcast of the show, I interviewed Dr. Claude Anderson about 6 or 7 weeks ago, something like that. It was in July that I interviewed Dr. Claude Anderson. If you go back, listen to that podcast, we talked about the Black Freedmen Indian treaties in that podcast. Okay. Jill Stein wants to enforce reparations. Good luck with that. Okay, now you tell me how you going to enforce reparations. Okay, how you going to enforce it? Some people are saying have President Obama do an executive order, things like this. What nobody is talking about, really, except for Dr. Claude Anderson and myself, are enforcing the treaties that already exist. Because the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians, they get about $3.5 billion in aid each year from the federal government. They get free casino licenses, free radio station licenses, free TV station licenses, free taxes, free college tuition. Many of our ancestors were in those treaties and got pushed out of them in 1941 when the U.S. government conspired with these 5 civilized tribes of Native Americans, so-called 5 civilized tribes of Native Americans, to redefine what a Native American is. And then they stipulated that you had to have 1/4 or 1 quantum Native American blood, but the original treaties didn't state that. So this is why you have to understand history, okay? So so this is why I don't even use the term. I don't even talk about reparations. Why? Because this is a divisive term. When you bring up reparations, then you have a lot of white people to say, well, I never owned slaves. That was something my ancestors did, blah, blah, blah. Okay, the way people are framing the argument is incorrect. If you come to the presentation I'm doing this Saturday, September 3rd, 2016, from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m., at Alkebulan Village, 7701 Harper Avenue in Detroit, we can have this conversation. The way people are framing the argument is incorrect. Okay? They want reparations for the work their ancestors did during slavery, blah, blah, blah. That's the wrong way to frame the conversation. It's for 246 years of slavery, decades of Jim Crow segregation, decades of, you have the black codes, you have forced sharecropping, you have redlining, you have housing discrimination, and what's happened is you've had all these are all public policies. These are all public policies that came from government, federal government, state government, local government. Housing discrimination, redlining, Homeowners Loan Corporation, created in 1933 by the federal government, came from the New Deal, created the redlining process. Farmers Home Administration, created in 1934 from the New Deal, President Roosevelt, federal government, and they're going to utilize the redlining process when it comes to giving out home mortgages and home loans for mortgages, all types of things like this. So all of this comes out of white supremacy and racism. Okay, racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, coming out of the ideology of European white supremacy. Okay, so we could deal with we're going to talk about that Saturday as well. Okay, because when I do my presentations, I can't get away without talking about that. And I spend the first 15 to 20 minutes dispelling a lot of myths and clearing up a lot of misinformation, so then we can then deal with the facts and evidence. This is why I start off dealing with African people being indigenous to this land. Columbus did not discover America because he never came to the land we call the United States of America. I deal with things like this, okay? But check out, if you order my presentation, Black Wall Street, From Destruction to the Resurrection of Economic Empowerment for African Americans. I deal with the Black Freedmen Indian treaties there. If you listen to the interview I did, the podcast and the interview I did back in July with Dr. Claude Anderson, we talk about it there also. You can go to his website, powernomics.com. He has an article there about the Black Freedmen Indian treaties right on the homepage. He has an article there. You can check that out also. All right. Kathy Colbert said, out and out stealing of black land when run off their property with threat of death or death. Now, what's important for us to note when we fight to enforce the Black Freedmen Indian treaties, enforce anything, or when we talk about quote unquote reparations, first and foremost, you have to start with African people being indigenous to this land, and this was our land stolen from us. It's not just talking about 246 years of slavery. It's not just talking about the theft of our skills, trades, and crafts. There were at least 262 skills, trades, and crafts that African people had in this country from 1619 to 1865. It's not just that. We have to start with the premise, the factual historical premise, that this was our land stolen from us by Europeans, and we were enslaved on this land, stripped of our nationality, stripped of our history and culture and language and spiritual systems and things like this. Okay, you have to start with that premise, not start with the premise of us in slavery. All right, I gotta get out of here. I want to thank everybody. See you all this Saturday, September 3rd, 2016. First Saturday's Marketplace at Al-Kibalan Village. Come out, check out my presentation. The time we have been waiting for is now. Colin Kaepernick, the national anthem, the slave movies, and the Black Bank movement. You don't want to miss this. It's going to blow you away. Bring pen and pad to take notes. And then we'll record this also. We'll have the presentation on DVD maybe sometime next week, something like that. I have to figure it out. So tell your friends about it. I know a lot of people around the country, outside the country, will see this. Share this on your Facebook pages. You can share the link on Twitter, things like that. Tell your friends in Detroit to come on out to the presentation. Saturday's a free event. Bring the family as well. And remember, what you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you is based upon what you think about yourself. It's not over till we win. Right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.